Hey and welcome to this third and final video in this training. This time we're going to jump into Photoshop and do something cool similar to what we got right here. So let's start by making a new document, not layer. Well, layer as well, I guess. So start by unlocking this layer. I don't know, I just don't like it to be locked. So the tools I'm using, as I mentioned in the first video, video 1 is I'm using this tablet, which is an old Wacom Intuos 3. Wacom or Wacom. Still have no idea how to say it correctly, and I'm using a pen like that. So that's the regular pen for the tablet. So, what do we want to start with? Well, I like to start with making this canvas a different color. Actually, let's just use black, make a new layer. New layer. Alright, let's do it like this then. And I'm gonna pick the airbrush. Now I'm gonna put down a layer of just gray here, because I want to have gray since it's gonna allow me to play around with both black and white, so I can use the white as well and make it help the shading. If I have a white canvas, it's just like sketching on a toned paper, for example. Let's do something like that. New layer. And the first thing we want to do is to just get, warmed up with this tablet and the Photoshop software. So I'm just gonna do a bunch of random lines. This is very similar to what we did on paper, but now we're jumping into Photoshop. So we're basically doing the same thing, only digital now. So we want to get used to this, to the software and to the pen and all of that, the tablet. So what I like to do, there are different ways of sketching in Photoshop, obviously. What I like to do is keep it loose. I like to keep things loose, and I don't like to use the select tool too much in my sketching, because if I use the select tool too much, in my opinion, it's gonna make my sketch look boring. It's gonna make my sketch look kind of lifeless, and I want to have some life in the sketch, and by that I mean some imperfections. So let's say we want to sketch a cube. What you can do, you can select your areas of the cube like this. Like that, and you can start to fill this in with the selection tool. That works perfectly, and you can make another selection for the first surface here. Actually, something like this right there, and you can go ahead and start to add the different shades to this if you want to do that this way. I'm going to show you a different way that I prefer, a different type of sketching or approach to this type of sketching. And there we have our cube. That's one way of doing it. It's really quick, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to really do this. But as you can see, I don't know, the sketch just looks boring to me. So I'm gonna delete this cube here, just using the eraser. And what I'm gonna do now is create a new layer, select black, just fill this in like this, like a crazy person. Select a hard eraser, and then you want to erase the excess of the airbrush, if that makes sense. So I'm just gonna erase the silhouette until I have a silhouette of the box that I'm trying to sketch. And yes, it's not going to be perfect. That's not the point here. I don't want to have a perfect looking cube. That is not the way I like to sketch. And if you want to learn how to sketch that, there's probably, you know, I don't know how many tutorials on how to do that. So I'm trying to show you a different approach here than compared to what everybody else is doing. And this is the approach that I'm going to teach you in the Academy as well. So we're going to do sketching in Photoshop similar to this style. We're going to sketch different objects using this loose type of sketching. I'm not going to use the select tool too much. Maybe for cut lines eventually I can show you on this cube in just a moment how we can do that. So from here I'm going to make a new layer. Select the airbrush again, and now I want to select a lighter tone. And first of all, keep in mind where the light source is coming from. So in this case, we have the light source coming from here. So we have a sun shining on this cube. That means that this surface is going to be surface number one. This surface is going to be surface number 2, and we have 3 over there. What I mean by this is this surface, this one is going to be the brightest one. Number 2 is going to be the you know, medium bright one. Surface number 3 is going to be the darkest one because it's on the opposite side of the light source. Gonna delete this now. I can keep that sun up there so we remember the light source. Select the airbrush, and then we do the exact same thing here. Starting to go over the surface that we wanna bring out the surface by just erasing the stuff that we don't need. There we go. Now I'm gonna come back and define this a bit more with some highlights, and maybe we can make a cut line somewhere. We'll see. So that was surface number 1. New layer, surface number 2. Not as bright as surface number 1, but still pretty bright. Just using the hard eraser to erase the stuff I don't need. And then last but not least, we want to go to surface number 3. So new layer again, and just fill this out really light with the pen so that we don't get a lot of white on there. This is totally up to you which style you prefer. You can use the selection tool for this, obviously, if you want to do that. But I think if you want to practice, your line quality, for example, and your precision, your hand precision, then this is a really good way of you know, trying to hit the same line over and over again. So as you can see here, we have these edges which are a bit messy. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna select this regular pen, it has to be the pen, obviously, not the eraser. So use this one with a pressure sensitivity. I'm gonna go to black, select black, and then I'm gonna start to sketch this out. You know, create the baseline. Like this. Just make it look like a sketch. As I said before, we don't want things to be perfect. That's not the goal. I mean, if you want things to be perfect, then you might as well 3D model it and have all the lightning and the shadows and everything just be perfect, and have a computer do the calculation for that. But that's not what I want in my sketches. I want it to be a sketch. So as you can see, I'm a bit rusty hitting this line. Super rusty. Well, there we go. And then same thing with this line here. We can add some. Actually, let's make that white because it's right next to the light source. You can make some little bit of highlight on this edge here as well. Like that. Then we can zoom in. If you have issues with this, just zoom in and start to add some burn points like this if you want to do that. And this is what's going to make your sketch really pop once you start to render products and stuff like that. We could go on and render this cube and make it more like a rendering and less like a sketch, but this is always how I start out all my sketches in Photoshop. Very loose sketching. And by the way, you're gonna get this what's it called? The brush set that I'm using. You're gonna get it for free, included in the Academy. So you can download the exact brushes that I'm using here. All my brushes, custom brushes, and all of this. You can have it, and I think it's gonna be beneficial for you when you get into the Academy and we start to sketch inside of Photoshop. And if you want to follow along, it's good to have the same brush set that I'm using in the videos. So there we go. So let's say we want to add a cut line here. So for cut lines, I sometimes use this pen tool. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to show you how to make a cut line. And then we want to go around this cube. Obviously, it is in perspective, so the cut line has to follow the shape of the cube. And this is basic perspective, something that we're obviously gonna talk about in the Academy as well, so you don't have to worry about that. Then I want to pick the same brush that I just used. Go down to 4 pixels is good. And back to the pen tool. Right click and stroke path. It's going to create a line like that. Then I want to duplicate this layer. Duplicate. Go up to image, adjustment, and invert. Put this copy below the black one, the black line, and then just move it down 1 or 2 pixels like that. And there we have a cut line. What this is going to do now is going to visualize the reflections on the cut line. So you have the light is coming from the top, right? So that means that the bottom edge of this cut line is going to have the white on it. If the light was coming from the bottom, we would have the reflection or the highlight be at the top edge of the cut line here. But now we're going to move it down here. And since this side here is in the dark, that means that we want to just tone down the white just a little bit because it's in the shadow. This can still be white on this side here. Looks good. And then we can even select this color here and kind of carve out the side of this to really make it look like it's the box is actually cut there. That makes sense. Same on this side over here. These are just tiny details that's gonna make just give some extra dimension or whatever to the sketch by breaking it up like that. And I can also show you in this video the how you can use textures on the cube. Fill that out just like that. So let's make a new layer again. Put that on top, put it in overlay, blend mode. And then we want to hit, select some cool texture here. So let's see what we have. Let's see what this looks like. Maybe not. Maybe this one. That looks cool, so let's use this brush. So I'm selecting the same color that I'm sketching on. So I'm just using this tool. I can't remember what it's called. Let's see. Not that one. This one up here. The eyedropper tool. So I'm using the eyedropper tool to just select the same kind of shading that that's beneath this brush. So I'm gonna select this over here, for example, so I have a lighter shade now, and just go over the side to give it some texture. I don't want to go overboard with this texture, I just want to keep it really subtle. And same thing at the top here. So that's one way of creating texture really fast. Just create a new layer in overlay, blend mode, and select a textured brush, and then you just go over all the surfaces to create some texture like this. Or if you have an image of, for example, wood, I'm going to show you that as well inside the Academy, but then you can just paste the image, make it fit the side, so you have it in perspective, fit each side, and then you just put that image into overlay and change the opacity, play around with the exposure and so on until you have a nice looking wooden texture. But I'm not going to go into that in this video. I'm going to show you that later if you join the Academy. Alright, so I think we're done with this cube here. I also like to do, as a final touch, all my sketches, I like to copy this whole canvas so what you want to do is select the whole thing at the top layer, hit Command-Shift-C, and then just paste it, Command-V. That will put all these layers into one top layer. And what you want to do now is go into color balance. I like to make it a bit bluish or something like that, so you can see here's the before and here's the after. I'm not sure what this looks like on your screen, but it gives it a bit of a blue tone to the sketch and just makes it look nice. And then we can go in and fix the perspective if we want to do that inside of Liquify. So we can just adjust this cube a little bit. Maybe it's a bit cheating, but I mean, you gotta use the tools that you have available. Something like that looks cool. And that's about it for this last training video. I'm also gonna throw in this PSD file of a few headphone designs here that I made, so you can download this PSD file right here on this page below this video and open it up in your on your computer inside of Photoshop and just check out what goes in each layer here and how this all is built up. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you inside the Academy.